Norse mythology has been a part of the gaming world for a long time. Whether we're talking about recurring summons in the Final Fantasy series, or games centered around the mythos like Valkyrie Profile or Hellblade. You can find a lot of different takes on Norse and Viking lore in the video game world. What we are talking about today takes the lore but combines it with horror and futuristic tech for a very different showcasing of Odin, Thor, Loki, and more. Here is my review of Apsulov: End of Gods for the Nintendo Switch. The story of Apsulov is about a woman named Alice. She wakes up being experimented on by a crazy surgical robot and escapes into the ventilation shaft nearby. Led by someone else, she goes on a journey surrounded by Nordic runes and artifacts to find out who she is and what is going on in this chaotic facility that seems to be filled with horrific monsters. The plot of Apsulov is pretty unique and interesting. It starts out a little slow, but once you begin getting the backstory, the game takes Nordic myth and pushes it in a very different direction than I've seen in other media. The origin of Alice, the people guiding her, and how this world shows Nordic mythos, it is a tale that I wanted to know more about the more I played. I enjoyed it even more as the game gives you a lot of the backstory via findable audio logs, something I have absolutely loved in games ever since playing Doom 3. And before we end this section, Apsulov is actually a sequel of sorts to the developer's previous Nordic horror title, Unforgiving: A Northern Hymn. It isn't connected in the you need to play this game first kind of way, but they put some connections in the audio logs and some items you find that tie them into the same continuity. I reached out to the developers and they confirmed that Apsulov takes place sometime after the events of Unforgiving. When it comes to gameplay, Apsulov is a first-person horror game with a puzzle aspect to it. As you trek through the game, you will be navigating dark areas, dealing with enemies, and solving some light puzzles with opening up locked doors. Your main goal here is to move from one area to the next so the story can move forward. In typical horror fashion, these areas are very dark and hide horrific monsters that will chase after and attack you if they see you. At the start of the game, you have to learn to sneak past these enemies so you can explore the rooms and find clues like passcodes. But you do have tools to help you in the form of your sight and arm. Sight is a temporary way for you to see the unseen. It scans around you to show hidden writing and runes on the walls, but also illuminates the silhouettes of what is around you. This is done to be a flashlight of sorts and guide you on your way. It also shows the outlines of electrical wiring and panels you will need to interact with, making it feel very similar to Aloy's focus ability from Horizon Zero Dawn. Your artificial arm is the other and far more useful tool. This is used for scanning bodies for security lock access, but also contains electrical power. It lets you shoot off a pulse to interact with electrical equipment and later charge up a powerful attack that can destroy enemies. But considering the power of this weapon, it comes with the price of limited charges or ammo. You'll find upgrades as you play the game that increases its charge capacity, and will find cartridges and electrical stations you can use to refill the arm to be able to use it again, but it can and will run out. And you don't want that. The enemies in this game are quick on their feet and can easily kill you. From the psychotic humanoid slaves to an arachnophobe's worst nightmare. That's me, by the way. You will be using the arm's abilities heavily throughout the game, and the further you get, the more you're gonna need to use it. You also need the arm for exploration. There are lots of rooms in the game you don't need to go into, but can. The game hides 28 collectibles in lockers, rooms, corridors, and more. As all of this comes together, we get about as much content in length as you would expect from a game like this. I spent a pretty fair amount of time exploring optional rooms and completed the game in around 7 hours. Once you finish it, you unlock more difficulty options, concept art, and New Game Plus. This lets you trek through the game again with all obtained upgrades for nabbing the collectibles and logs you missed the first time around. Next up is presentation. As expected, there's a fair amount of blurring going on in the Nintendo Switch release, though it isn't heavy enough that the wall writing cannot be read. On the bright side, it looks exactly the same in both docked and handheld, so the resolution and blurring doesn't get worse when you undock your Switch. And with performance, things are mostly good depending on where you are. It tries to stick to 30 FPS, though some areas do drop it down to the 20s. Sometimes it only drops for a few seconds, while other areas really struggle to keep it at 30. That's all I've got to say about that, so now let's go into battery life. Apsulov gives the original model a range of 2.5 to 3 hours, the Nintendo Switch Lite 3 to 3.5, and the Redboxer V2 a range of around 6 to 8 hours. In conclusion, Apsulov combines Nordic myth and science fiction into a unique horror adventure. While the experience is dragged down by the slow start and visual and FPS drops of the Switch release, it is definitely worth checking out if you're a fan of the mythos and horror, be it on the Switch or somewhere else. I had a lot of fun with it and have my fingers crossed for a sequel. Reviews to go rates Apsulov End of Gods for the Nintendo Switch a 7.5 out of 10. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. Thank you for watching and have a great day.